Cool Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host, the Yamin of Revolution. Who killed Senator Lindsey Graham? The update. But before we get into that, y'all be sure to wipe y'all feet. That means hit the like button. You in the House of Revolution. Like, share, subscribe, support the platform, y'all. Well, let's get right into the content tonight. Salute.
A few hours ago, insiders in Kyiv confirmed that Volodymyr Zelensky and his entourage are still in real shock over the death of U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham. Furthermore, insiders also reported that the security service of Ukraine has already detained two officers of the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. It is well known that the detained Ukrainian officers are suspected of passing valuable information to Russian intelligence. It is noteworthy that immediately after that, pro-government Ukrainian TG channels and experts began to blame Russia for the death of a U.S. senator. My dear truth seekers, let me remind you that Lindsey Graham was an ardent Russophobe, and constantly called for the mass murder of Russians and the physical elimination of Vladimir Putin. Moreover, Lindsey Graham was the author of the toughest anti-Russian sanctions, and called for the complete destruction of not only the Russian economy, but also the economies of Moscow-friendly countries. Against this backdrop, the Kremlin blacklisted Lindsey Graham, declaring him a terrorist and extremist. Simply put, Lindsey Graham was a legitimate target for the Russian special services. It was this fact that led many in the United States and Ukraine to accuse Moscow of murdering Lindsey Graham. Moreover, many independent experts and bloggers also pointed out that the day before Lindsey Graham's death was announced, he visited the Skyfall factory in Kyiv. During a visit to this plant, the Ukrainians showed the U.S. senator the latest kamikaze drones and the interceptor drone P-1 Sun. And here, the most interesting part begins. As it turned out, Lindsey Graham was in Kyiv on the very day when Russia launched another massive missile strike on the Ukrainian capital. Furthermore, Russian and Ukrainian sources confirmed that during this attack, Russian missiles hit the very factory where the U.S. senator was shown the latest Ukrainian kamikaze drones. Against this backdrop, many Western bloggers and experts have suggested that Lindsey Graham died as a result of a Russian missile strike on Kyiv. By the way, Russian Telegram channels also added fuel to the fire. In particular, when Lindsey Graham arrived in Kyiv and recorded another video in the center of the Ukrainian capital, calling for the continued killing of Russians, they began to resent the inaction of the Kremlin. They said that the Russian authorities should not turn a blind eye to the arrival in Kyiv of people whom Moscow considers terrorists and extremists. And just a couple of hours after the Russian massive missile strike on Kyiv was launched, information appeared about the sudden death of Lindsey Graham. Whether this was a coincidence, or whether Russia deliberately struck the place where Lindsey Graham was located, remains a mystery. My dear truth seekers, against this backdrop, it is also worth noting the statements of some Ukrainian experts. In particular, referring to their own sources in the security service of Ukraine, they stated that Lindsey Graham was eliminated not as a result of a missile strike, but during poisoning. According to them, the Russian special services allegedly poisoned Lindsey Graham with a delayed action substance when he left Kyiv on a special train. According to them, this substance causes severe heart failure and kills a person within 15-20 hours. It is reported that Lindsey Graham began to feel unwell throughout the journey and died suddenly as soon as he arrived in the United States. Whether this statement is true or not is difficult to say. Nevertheless, it is worth recognizing that the death of Lindsey Graham did cause serious damage to the Kiev regime, especially given the fact that this U.S. senator exerted great pressure on Trump to force the 47th President of the United States to increase support for Ukraine. By the way, it is also worth noting that insiders in Kiev confirmed that on July 13, amid Lindsey Graham's death, many American and European politicians canceled their visits to the Ukrainian capital. All this indicates that they have really begun to fear for their lives, and that the escalation of the current war continues to gain momentum. Meanwhile, Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin said that the Kiev regime had launched 300 kamikaze drones towards the Russian capital. At the same time, he noted that the capital's air defense had once again successfully repelled another massive drone attack on Moscow. It is noteworthy that immediately after that, Russia launched another combined missile attack on such Ukrainian cities as Kiev, Odessa, Chernomorsk, Kremenchuk, and Dnipro. It is well known that in Kiev and Kremenchuk, Russian missiles struck oil pumping stations. For example, in the southwestern part of Kremenchuk, Ukrainian firefighters still cannot extinguish the fire at the Andriivka oil pumping station. In Dnipro, Russian kamikaze drones destroyed the locomotive VL-11M134, which was actively used by the Ukrainian army. In Odessa and Chernomorsk, Russian fifth-generation fighter jet Su-57 dealt a devastating blow to the port infrastructure of these cities. During this attack, the logistics of the Ukrainian army and NATO forces were destroyed. In addition, the Russian Defense Ministry also showed a video of the destruction of 2 bulk carriers and 1 military boat in the port of Odessa. It is reliably known that during this attack, Russian Su-57 fighter jets used more than 10 Kh-69 stealth cruise missiles. Against this backdrop, the reputable Ukrainian TG channel Legitimy made a rather shocking statement. In particular, this Telegram channel, citing its sources in the Ukrainian General Staff, stated that very soon Russia will focus on destroying Ukraine's logistics infrastructure, the key component of which is seaports in cities such as Odessa, Nikolaev, and Chernomorsk. At the same time, it is reported that Russia will completely destroy all Ukrainian seaports by the end of 2026. Thus, it becomes clear that Russia is gradually turning a special military operation into a real war. Against this backdrop, it is also worth noting the serious successes of the Russian troops on the battlefield. So, on the morning of July 13, the Russian Defense Ministry officially announced that Russian troops had completely liberated the settlement of Bachevsk, in the Sumy direction of the front. Moreover, the Russian General Staff also confirmed the Russian army's major successes in the Kharkiv direction. In particular, it became known that Russian units destroyed the Ukrainian forces in a cauldron, east of the recently liberated settlement of Zemlya Yar. As a result, an area of about 45 square kilometers came under Russian control.
Lindsey Graham arrived in Kyiv roughly around between 10:30 and 11 a.m. on Friday morning. He left Washington, D.C. on Thursday morning around 7 a.m. It was a 10-hour flight to get to Poland, at which point he boards a train either in Warsaw. There's a stationed closer to the border. Depends on where he flew in, but the reality is it's about a 20 to 21 hour journey total to get into Kyiv. So he's in Kyiv, meets with Zelensky, then goes visits that drone factory, and some point, whether he's there or it happened after he gets there, the drone factory's bombed Friday night into Saturday morning. Then he supposedly returns to the United States and dies at home. Here's the problem. The train that leaves Kyiv to take you back to Poland goes at 7:45. And understand, this train is how, remember when Macron, Keir Starmer, and Merz were all on the train, doing blow or something. Ursula von der Leyen, she takes the train. Joe Biden, he took the train. The train is the main way in and out of Kyiv, because the only flights that go in and out are these medical emergency flights that are hauling cadavers and wounded Western soldiers. So the train leaves around 8 a.m. from Kyiv, 10-hour train. So it gets back to Warsaw around 5 p.m. 5 p.m. is around 10 a.m. Washington, D.C. time, maybe 11 a.m. Okay? So then he catches a plane. The earliest the plane probably would have left would have been, again, if you're just following the normal route, you leave at 12 noon. What's 10 hours on top of 12 noon? That takes it to 10 p.m. Washington, D.C. time, right? The 911 call was placed at 8:30 p.m. So if his plane doesn't land till like 10 p.m., how is it that he's already died at 8:30 p.m.? The numbers don't make sense. Now, what would be a way to get his quote body back in time for an 8:30 death announcement is if he either suffered a heart attack in Kyiv, or he was wounded in Kyiv and the wounds proved fatal. But he died. He was dead before he got back to his house, because there's no way in hell that if you take the train and take the plane, because the plane flight from Warsaw itself is at least 10 hours, 10 and a half hours, because you're flying into headwinds going east to west. It's not like when you fly west to east, you get to travel a little quicker. That plane, the earliest that plane could have landed would have been, if everything had gone smoothly with no problem, 9 p.m. That's still 30 minutes before the 911 phone call comes. Oh, we've got to, there's a medical issue here, a sudden illness. Yeah, lead poisoning. So it's.
You think he might have been poisoned?
No, I don't know. All I know is the story that they placed the 911 call at 8:30 p.m. and he had somehow died between. Trump said he talked to him at 7 p.m. and then by 8:30 p.m. he's dropped dead. It's a lie. It's not true. Given what the train schedules are, those search it online. Don't take my word for it. Search online what the plane flights are, whether it's a scheduled plane flight or it's a military, if it's some military plane detailed to carry Lindsey Graham back and forth. It's just you don't overcome geography and physics. So the earliest the plane could have gotten there back in the United States was 10 p.m. at night. You could, under another scenario, get there at midnight. Well, he's by 10 p.m. He's already been dead, 2.5 hours or an hour and a half. So, the story we're getting is nonsense. It's not true.
What's your theory?
No.
Speculative theory.
I'm not doing speculation. I'm dealing with the facts here. The facts are he's dead, and the claim that he died at home is not true. if he traveled the normal way back from Poland. There's no way he could have been back in his home by 7 p.m. Impossible.
Is there other ways
he-
for him to travel?
No. Well, yeah, there's another way if you're on a medical evacuation flight. That's the point. Unless there is an emergency, you don't put him on a medical evacuation flight out of Kyiv. Unless there is an emergency, you don't put him on a U.S. military aircraft flying out of Kyiv. And that means if there's a medical emergency, he's not getting off the plane going, "Oh, I feel great. I'm going to go home and talk to Trump." You're being fed a line of bullshit. You need to be a little more skeptical of these folks, man. They put out stories and you just gobble them up and go, "Oh, okay." It's not the case.
I haven't
man. I haven't
even read the story.
Oh yeah, so look at the train schedules. The morning train that goes from Kyiv back to Poland goes between 7:45 and 8 a.m. It's a 10-hour trip.
No, let's see. I can do it now if you like. So when did Lindsey Graham? So he left Ukraine by train to Poland, correct? And then took an aircraft from Poland back home?
I'm saying if look, the normal route that these guys take, it's not just Graham. Every time Graham's gone, he's been on the train in the past. Ursula von der Leyen, Macron, Biden, any of the U.S. officials that have gone, European officials, they take the damn train. To get to the train, you got to take a plane from the United States to get to Poland, whether it's Warsaw or Szczecin, I think is the post on the border. But again, the total travel time getting there is over 20 hours, and the total travel time coming back is closer to 23 hours. So if he left at 8 a.m. Saturday morning from Kyiv, the normal route, just figure 22 hours from there. So 8 a.m. means it's 1 a.m. in the morning. Add 22 hours to that. That's 11 p.m. at night, Washington, D.C. time. Yet the 911 call allegedly came at 8:30. How the hell did he get back? Because the only other way is on a medical evacuation flight. Why does a perfectly healthy senator take a medical evacuation flight? Any answer?
Just in case no, of course I don't know much. All I know that he there was an emergency call and he was found dead and it was a cardiac arrest. But I've been too busy with Iran, so I haven't even done a deep dive into the story.
That's the official
That is
story
the story,
being put
yeah,
out.
yeah.
The 911
all I
call
know.
came at 8:30 p.m. Okay, the timeline of when if he was traveling normal, the normal travel is plane to Poland, train to Ukraine, and it's usually an overnight train when you get in the morning, which he did between 10:30 a.m. and 11 a.m. on Friday. If you want to reverse that and go back to Poland, the earliest train is at 7:45 to 8 a.m., but you still, the train is not some super fast train all of a sudden. It defies the laws of physics. It takes 10 hours or more to get back. And then once he's back, then he's got to go from the train station, even if he's got a military escort or whatever, to zip him to the tarmac, and he's on even a chartered flight. The chartered flight still doesn't have supersonic capability to overcome the time and distance. It's another 10 to 11 hours. That's 20 hours at least.
Yeah.
And that's not counting any time in between, delays at the airport. So the earliest he could have, quote, gotten back the normal route would be 9 p.m. Well, that's 30 minutes after he allegedly died.
That's bizarre.
I'm curious. We saw last week 43 million people attend the funeral of Syed Ali Khamenei. How many people do you think are going to attend the funeral of Lindsey Graham? Yes, we lost a real hero today. Let me try that again. I got to say this with a straight face. We lost a real hero today. Sorry, I can't look at the camera when I say that, or else I'm going to laugh. We lost we lost something today. We lost someone today who has cloaked themselves in the word human, and they have appropriated our human aesthetic. We've lost Lindsey Graham. And I can't tell you I have anything nice to say about Lindsey Graham. I really can't. There are some people on social media saying, like, Jackson Hinkle, this is just despicable. Where is the decorum? Where is the decorum, Jackson? What does that even mean? These people don't even know what the words they're using. Where is the decorum? Well, he called for nuking Gaza like 50 times. He said that our money is being well spent because we're killing a bunch of Russians. We're going to fight till the last Ukrainian. This is not really a great guy. Not really a great guy. I don't know what we should really call him. What we did have confirmed today is that Lindsey Graham, on the evening of Saturday, July 11th, Graham passed away from a brief and sudden illness. Senator Graham's family appreciates prayers at this time and asks for privacy during this incredibly difficult period. Now, personally, I've got a lot of questions about the death of Lindsey Graham. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. This guy was on video. Lindsey Graham was on video like just one day ago in Ukraine and talking about all the new drone technology and the agreements with Kiev and how they're going to kill more Russians. And he looked completely fine. He looked totally healthy for whatever, healthy is for Lindsey Graham. He looked normal, I should say. I don't know if we can really call that normal for the average person, but for Lindsey Graham, he looked very normal. Right? And then all of a sudden we get this weird post that he died of a sudden illness. Not he had like a heart attack. He, had a aneurysm, a seizure, something like a sudden illness. What does that even mean? And then we come to find out that Lindsey Graham was not on just some usual trip to Ukraine. Lindsey Graham, this was his last public appearance before dying. He met with Zelensky in Kiev on Friday. And he was at some drone factory. Okay, there's photos of him at this drone factory. Now, this is where we put the tinfoil hat on, okay? Yesterday, U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham visits Ukraine to assure Zelensky support from the United States. The warmonger was shown a secret drone manufacturing facility in Kiev. Well, this facility no longer exists after strikes by the Russian MOD. Without warning, 6 missiles struck 2 manufacturing facilities in the Kiev region. The Russian Ministry of Defense confirmed strikes on drone sites, which started a huge fire. None of Russia's ballistic missiles were shot down. Lindsey Graham is no longer in Ukraine. Well, this is all just very weird because it became apparent about 3 days prior to this event that Ukraine had run out of their Patriot defense system missiles, air defense system missiles. So they were all out of any meaningful air defense to stop Russian ballistic missiles. And then someone gets the bright idea to send Lindsey Graham there, despite the fact that they have no air defense. And then, boom, magically, he passes on from a sudden illness. Let me just put it this way for all of you. There is a non-zero chance that Lindsey Graham was killed in a Russian airstrike. There is a non-zero. I can't say that did not happen because we frankly don't know. They've lied to us before. By the way, where's Mitch McConnell? He's still missing. Now, there's also another conspiracy rabbit hole that we could dive down if we really wanted to, that being that it was not a Russian missile strike that took out U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham. And it was actually something more nefarious and a much deeper plot, right? That being that Mossad could have possibly taken out U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham. Let's take a look at this right here. The Russian philosopher Alexander Dugin actually postured at this possibility. Frankly, I got to say, kind of could make sense. The sudden death of Lindsey Graham can be the black mark sent to Trump. I doubt it were Iranians. Most realistic, it was Mossad's job in order to push Trump to renew full-scale war with Iran. It clearly means you are the next one. Lindsey Graham was the shadow of Trump, his black self, his shadow self, you could say. And that kind of makes sense to me, right? It kind of does. You have all this talk from Netanyahu over and over and over and over again saying that, there's these, plots to unalive the president of the United States. Iran has tried, a gajillion times to unalive the president of the United States, and they just can't seem to do it. They get stopped every time.
They kill Charlie.
But this is somehow, a very serious thing. And Trump keeps saying that if anything happens to his safety or well-being, then he has already a plan in place to launch the mother of all missile attacks, quite possibly nuclear attacks against Iran if he is threatened in any meaningful way. So this could be a way for Netanyahu to say, like, you're next, buddy. And whether Trump understands what's happening or not, I don't know. But it is undoubtedly clear that Lindsey Graham was like very.
And that was a mistake. That gave incentive to Mossad to whack him. So the U.S. have no choice but to declare war, draft millions of Americans, and invade Iran. That's what Israel wants. For the U.S. to actually declare war, draft Americans, and send millions of Americans to die in their war.
Very close with Trump. He was the mastermind behind a lot of these, or I shouldn't say mastermind, Lindsey Graham. We don't want to give him too much credit, right? He was the man who was lobbying Trump on a personal level for a lot of the most heinous acts that we have seen him carry out. And the reason why
they had all of the dirt on him. I got those videos. Since he did, all kind of different trannies and gay people is coming out. Some of them had NDAAs with him. They couldn't talk. Now they can't be sued. So they telling the truth about all the times they was hooking up with Lindsey Graham and he was paying for this and paying for that. And he used to dress up in red dresses. That's all out. And the news haven't said one word, but we got those videos. So now that all of these gay people is coming out, you think that Mossad didn't have that? They had all that information. They've been blackmailing Lindsey Graham for a long time. They got him doing some very disgusting Epstein type stuff.
He has been unable to secure a peace deal with Russia, right? And the reason why we're at war with Iran and why the horrific crimes in Gaza continue, it was Lindsey Graham. So I could see that actually being part of this whole plot from Mossad and Israel to put pressure on Trump to recontinue the war in a big way. And it kind of seems like we are headed towards that, right? Like the war is escalating right now. Anyways, that's enough for the conspiracy rabbit hole. Now let's take a deeper dive into who Lindsey Graham was and the legacy that he leaves on, shall we? Lindsey Graham has passed away today under mysterious circumstances, we'll say. And all I'm left wondering is, for Lindsey Graham, a man who was so dedicated to unaliving Sayyid Ali Khamenei his whole life, destroying Iran, and he failed at the end of it all. I'm curious. We saw last week 43 million people attend the funeral of Sayyid Ali Khamenei. How many people do you think are going to attend the funeral of Lindsey Graham? And by people, I mean like not lizard people, not actual skinwalking demons. I'm talking about like real human beings. How many human beings do you think will attend the funeral of Lindsey Graham? I can tell you already, it will not be 43 million. It won't be anything above 43 million or close to 43 million. That is for certain. So if there is a bet online as to whether or not Lindsey Graham will have a larger funeral than Sayyid Ali Khamenei, do not put your money into that. That would be a waste of your money. I'm guessing maybe like...
It's only Putin, Obama, Xi Jinping, or Kim Jong-un. If they died, can they have a funeral like that? If Obama died, then millions of people around the world will come out for him. If Trump died, he can't get a million people to come out. That's what these leaders not love. They don't have love like that. Lindsey Graham can't get 5,000 people to come out.
Real human beings that have like a soul and a brain and a heart and a spine. I'm guessing roughly zero. I'm guessing roughly zero. The mic is wrong again. No, the mic is fine. Refresh your page. Refresh your page. Tell the people in the chat to refresh and it'll be fine. I'm guessing zero. About zero. Why do I say that? Because this was Lindsey Graham's life. You know, he said stuff like this.
I feel good about the Republican Party. I feel good about where we're going as a nation. We're killing all the right people and we're cutting your taxes.
A drunk Lindsey Graham says, we're killing all the right people and cutting your taxes. I feel good about what we're doing. Keep in mind, this was like, you know, this is as the Gaza genocide is going on. They bombed 160 schoolgirls, and he said, we're killing the right people and cutting your taxes. Cutting whose taxes, by the way? Cutting the taxes of the Palantir executives who are killing those babies? Yeah, not killing the working class, not cutting the working class's taxes, okay? He also, on numerous occasions, advocated for dropping nuclear bombs on Gaza.
So when we were faced with destruction as a nation after Pearl Harbor, fighting the Germans and the Japanese, we decided to end the war by bombing Hiroshima and Nagasaki with nuclear weapons. That was the right decision. Give Israel the bombs they need to end the war they can't afford to lose and work with them to minimize casualties. Well, can I say this? Why is it okay for America to drop 2 nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki to end their existential threat war? Why was it okay for us to do that? I thought it was okay. To Israel, do whatever you have to do to survive as a Jewish state.
You know, I said in the last clip that he was drunk while speaking in front of the Republican National Jewish Congress, but frankly, there's not much difference between a sober or intoxicated Lindsey Graham. He sounds all the same. He sounds just as ludicrous and bloodthirsty and genocidal. If you thought that was all, though, it wasn't. At the start of U.S. aggression against Iran, he had this to say.
Iran's going to have a choice in 2 to 3 weeks. You either do a deal where you get out of the business you're in, or we're going to blow your stuff up that will allow you to function as a nation.
2 to 3 weeks. Senator, don't make promises you cannot keep. We're far beyond the 2 to 3 weeks window that you set for the fall of the Islamic Republic of Iran. But Mojtaba Khamenei is here. The Iranian National Security Council remains. The revolution in Iran is stronger than ever before. I saw with my own 2 eyes this week. And where are you? Where are you? Somewhere deep down with Ronald Reagan. That's where you are.
That is your choice.
Well, let me ask this, because, by the way, I don't even think they have 2 or 3 weeks, Senator. That's 2 or 3 weeks when their infrastructure would be blown up. That's their electric grid. That is their ability to have any income. The lifeblood of their entire economy is oil. So that would no longer exist.
These are the thought leaders in the United States, folks. I want you to understand how brain dead these people are. The thought leaders on the most prestigious of mainstream media in the United States thought that Iran would last 2 to 3 weeks at best, but probably not even that. Probably not even that. And here they are, dog walking Trump. Here they are, standing tall, while Lindsey Graham goes to whatever pit he fell into. 2 to 3 weeks.
With Israel, I will be.
Oh, this is my favorite. I'm with Israel. I'm with Israel. You know, forget it. I'm with Israel. I'm not with you. I'm with Israel until my dying day. Screw those people in South Carolina. I'm not with you. I'm with Israel until my dying day.
All the anti-Semites to all the isolation.
All the anti-Semites.
I don't believe. Forget it. I'm not with you. I'm with Israel. I will be with Israel to our dying day. They're the best ally we could hope for. So we have a commander-in-chief in President Trump, who I think is Ronald Reagan plus, plus, plus. All the anti-Semites to all the
The gates of heaven were not open for this one. That's for sure. You know, it just goes on and on. And oh, yes, of course. The funniest part about all of this is like, you know, Lindsey Graham thought he was Trump's like best friend. And Trump comes out and he's like, you know, I think one of the reasons why we don't have peace in Ukraine is because Lindsey Graham, he really wanted that war to continue on for a long time. And then, so Trump is like dissing him as his body is still warm, right? Well, it's probably a lot warmer now, let's be honest. But his body has not even gotten cold yet. He's still, you know, they haven't put him in the ground yet. And Trump is like dissing him moments after his death was announced. And like Benjamin Netanyahu is the first person who comes out and he says, he affects this Southern accent a little bit. And he's like, well, he was just a good South Carolina boy. He's put on his Kevin Spacey House of Cards.
He was such an American patriot. He was unabashedly for America, and he was unabashedly against the enemies of America. And he spoke what he thought, you know, had a way with him. He had this charming Southern drawl, and you knew something was coming when he would say, well, I'm just a poor old Southern boy. And then, you know, he's coming in with the most penetrating insight that.
Penetrating is not the word I would want to use in a sentence to eulogize Lindsey Graham. I mean, it just gives everyone extremely unsettling and frankly disgusting images in their head. But continue on.
Few people can deny, and that everybody recognizes is the truth. He had a way with him. He was a wonderful, wonderful friend, a great American patriot, and a great champion of the Israel-American alliance. And I'll miss him personally a lot. I really, really thought the world of him. And I think the world has lost a great human being. America has lost a great senator, and we have lost a great friend. He was.
That's one way of putting it. Look, if you really, I'm not even going to say this. I don't even want to get into this, but if you really want to understand how disgusting of a human being Lindsey Graham is, look up on Twitter or TikTok. I'm sure you can find it anywhere. Look up Lindsey Graham ladybugs. I warned you. Just let me, I'm telling you all, I warned you. Lindsey Graham ladybugs. And I'm just giving you fair warning, you guys. Giving you fair warning. Sometimes it's just in moments like these, it's hard to really understand what the most disgusting thing about a person in their life was. But you know, you'll have to draw that conclusion yourself after reading that. Lindsey Graham ladybugs. Before you leave, I want to say thank you for the support, because after 2 years of being banned, we are finally back home on YouTube. So be sure to subscribe to our channel and also join as a member on our channel using the link at the top of the description. I rely on the generous support of viewers like yourself to get the truth out to as many people as possible. You can also support the show on Locals or Give Sin Go. The mainstream media and the powers that be are never going to stop attacking us for bringing the truth to as many people as we do. Thank you so much for your support.
Red flags regarding the sudden death of Lindsey Graham that I want to discuss on this video. Before I started the Midas Touch Network, I was a civil litigator, and I supervised hundreds of second autopsies performed by world-renowned forensic pathologists. And so I have an understanding of some of the questions that need to be asked. The purpose of this video is not to veer into the realm of conspiracy. It is to stick with the facts and to arm you with the knowledge and to arm others with the knowledge and to provide the questions that need to be answered. So let's just break this down. Here's how it's being described on state regime media Fox. An initial examination from the DC Medical Examiner's Office has determined that Senator Lindsey Graham died as a result of an aortic dissection due to the arteriosclerotic cardiovascular disease that he had. In layman's terms, this means a tear in the aorta caused by hardening and narrowing of arteries as a result of underlying cardiovascular disease. The DC Medical Examiner's Office put out the following statement. The death certificate will be pending until all the toxicological and microscopic testing are finalized, and at that point, the death certificate will be updated to reflect the cause of death and appropriately classify the manner of death. Now, before Lindsey Graham passed away, he had told individuals that he was feeling sick. He actually made a comment, "I can't die now. I still need to do the Russia sanctions." You'll recall that on Friday, Lindsey Graham was in Ukraine. He held a press conference there before heading back to the United States. The last person he seemed to have spoken with was Donald Trump. Donald Trump said he spoke with Lindsey Graham, who seemed tired. And here's more of what we're learning as it's being reported from another state regime source, Axios. But then I want to get into what I see as some of these red flags as well. So Senator Lindsey Graham held one final phone call with Donald Trump before his death, discussing Ukraine, a Russia sanctions bill, and possible new U.S. strikes on Iran. After the call, Graham told someone he wasn't feeling well, but planned to seek medical attention after his scheduled Sunday TV appearance. He reportedly joked, "I can't die now. I still need to do the Russia sanctions, get Iran sorted out, and do Israeli-Saudi normalization." He died several hours later. And then, as you know, Lindsey Graham's office put out the statement as follows. On the evening of Saturday, July 11th, U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham passed away from a brief and sudden illness. Senator Graham's family appreciates prayers at this time and asks for privacy during this incredible, difficult period. Donald Trump put out the statement that said, "Senator Lindsey Graham, one of the greatest people and senators I have ever known, is dead. He was always working and was a true American patriot. Lindsey will be greatly missed. Details and arrangements to follow. So sad. Donald J. Trump." He then also posted a message that "I'm ordering all American flags through the United States to be lowered to half-mast," although that's the terminology for Navy, until Saturday evening at 6 p.m. God bless you, Lindsey. Donald J. Trump. Now, FBI Director Kash Patel put out a statement saying that the FBI is assisting local authorities and has made every necessary resource available. Chad Pergram explains from colleague Jake Gibson, FBI agents are assisting MPD officers with the normal process at Senator Graham's house. There is no indication of foul play at this point, according to two federal law enforcement sources. MPD is the lead law enforcement agency at this point. Now, I want to highlight the fact that heart attacks in general have very frequently been given as the cause for Russian assassination attempts. The CIA developed its own weapon that could induce a heart attack, and foreign intelligence agencies across the world have access to this type of technology. And again, I'm not saying that this is what happened here. I want to arm you with some data points, though, because what you would need to do is an extensive toxicology exam, and you'd probably even need to bring in an expert botanist and someone who understands some of the extracts of different types of plants to be able to try to trace potential things that could or could not be in the bloodstream that may ultimately induce the heart attack, that may induce. This is an article from July 7th of 2026, which is notable, right? Because we're talking about, just last week or so. The CIA's heart attack gun, a Cold War weapon for targeted assassinations. And it talks about how there was a committee in the 1970s led by Senator Frank Church. It was the Church Committee. And one of the things that they described was a weapon. This is real. CIA had developed and other intelligence agencies developed a weapon that resembled a Colt M1911 1911 pistol with a scope. But it didn't fire the 45 caliber bullets. Instead, it fired a frozen pellet of saxitoxin, a poisonous substance derived from shellfish that consume toxic algae blooms. The pellets could be silently fired up to 100 meters away. It would enter the body through a pinprick entry wound. The poison would then melt. Within 10 minutes, the victim would be dead. Again, a poison dart the width of a human hair and a quarter of an inch long that was fired from this, and it would induce a heart attack. It was referred to in the CIA as the heart attack gun. Also, the KGB, the Soviet Union, they developed their own version. Bohdan Stashinsky, one of the KGB's hired guns, was known to have murdered two Ukrainian anti-Soviet activists, Lev Rebet and Stepan Bandera, in the 1950s with a gun that sprayed cyanide in their face, causing death within minutes. Their causes of death both looked like heart attacks. The CIA learned their true cause of death when Stashinsky eventually defected to the West in 1961. But there are more recent examples. In 2018, there were between 12 and 18 Russian oligarchs and Russian officials who died under very mysterious circumstances. And you take the story of a guy by the name of, and a lot of them died in the UK. You take the story of Alexander Perpletensky, and he was his body was found in November of 2012. An exiled Russian banker in the UK in fetal position, pale, cold, displaying very faint signs of life. He was cooperating against the Soviet Union, against Russia, with the UK in 2010. Initial toxicology tests on Perpletensky's body revealed nothing suspicious, and police said they had no evidence of foul play. Again, that's what we're hearing with Lindsey Graham, no evidence of foul play. But later tests performed by an expert botanist at Kew Gardens suggested the presence of a rare and deadly plant toxin within the stomach. Gelsemium, a flowering plant native to China and Southeast Asia, known as heartbreak grass because its leaves, if swallowed, cause cardiac arrest. Further tests of the compound found in Perpletensky could not definitively identify whether it was gelsemium, and an inquest into the death was suspended last year, pending more tests. So there was just a lot of red flags, though. Is that what happened, or was this very similar to what we currently believe happened with Lindsey Graham? Let's also not forget this article from 2022 from The Atlantic, Sudden Russian Death Syndrome. It's not a great time to be an oligarch who's unenthusiastic about Putin's war in Ukraine. Here's a list of people you should not currently want to be: a Russian sausage tycoon, a Russian gas industry executive, the editor-in-chief of a Russian tabloid, a Russian shipyard director, the head of a Russian ski resort, a Russian aviation official, a Russian rail magnate. Anyone answering to such description probably ought not stand near open windows in almost any country. And it talks about how there have been these dozens of suspicious and mysterious deaths across the world. And they also include suspected poisonings and suspicious heart attacks with the kind of death grass, the heartbreak grass that I noted before. Before continuing, one quick PSA for the Midas Mighty when it comes to Medicare. Most Medicare is sending a message to Thorban, and I'll read to you what he says. He says, Churkin was great. He understood Trump after our conversations. Again, this is June 24th, 2018. It's not complex. He must be seen to get something. It's that simple. And then Epstein is writing to Thorban Joglin and saying, I think you might suggest to Putin that Lavrov, Sergei Lavrov, can get insight talking to me. Vitaly Churkin used to do that, but he died, question mark, exclamation point. Now, Churkin died February 2017 at age 64. He was the Russian ambassador to the United Nations. And he died in New York under very mysterious circumstances of a heart attack, with kind of circumstances very similar to what we're hearing about with Lindsey Graham. Now, RT, Russian TV, posted this video of Lindsey Graham earlier in the day. Lindsey Graham's ecstatic about plan to put U.S. tariffs on Russian oil before sudden death. Maybe too ecstatic, Russia TV says. Here, play this clip.
Well, Senator.
Buddy, how you doing?
How you doing? Is there a foreign war you don't support?
I support wars that make America safer.
Thank you, sir.
Now, when Lindsey Graham was in Ukraine, he actually looked pretty decent. I mean, that's not to suggest that that condition couldn't rapidly deteriorate. But remember, here's what he looked like on Friday when he was in Ukraine, so you can see for yourself. Now, as Megan Mobbs explains, regarding Senator Graham's tragic passing of cardiac arrest, that's not an adequate answer. Cardiac arrest tells us how his life ended. It does not tell us why his heart stopped. Given the threat environment, the identities of America's adversaries, and Senator Graham's role, there could be lots of issues raised here. Igor Suska says, amid speculation that could have been Russia or somebody else assassinated Lindsey Graham by using a sophisticated biochemical agent designed to mimic a natural heart attack that uses the body's natural metabolic process to destroy the evidence. Modern forensic methods will likely identify it. The key is whether the circumstances warrant forensic pathology. Without any inside information, I believe so. Even if a toxic substance is engineered to break down almost instantly in the bloodstream, it doesn't just cease to exist. The body's liver and cellular enzymes break the chemical down into metabolites, secondary compounds. The primary toxin may have a half-life of only minutes or hours, but its specific metabolic fingerprints often remain stable and biological symptoms for much longer. Now, we know that the Trump regime is incompetent and mishandles everything, but you would actually want to do not just a full tox screening, but you would want the FBI or the intelligence community to engage in thorough tests, to bring in renowned botanists and people who understand the very types of chemicals that the CIA had worked on, that the KGB had worked on, in order to try to further assess what's going on or what could be going on. Now, let's talk about the radio traffic the evening that Lindsey Graham died. 8:27 p.m., Engine 7 and Medic 7 were dispatched to Graham's home on South Capitol Street Southeast. At 8:32, Engine 7 requested a call back to get someone inside to open the locked door. 8:33, dispatcher reported the caller said she was not in the home and the door is unlocked. 8:34, dispatcher reported that the caller asked if they knocked on the door, believing the patient would answer. Notice the term patient, yes. Dispatcher said the caller is coming from Baltimore. The dispatcher asked Engine 7 if they would like a ladder truck company to force entry and asked about the need for DC police. Engine 7 said they will need police, but they can handle forced entry into the home. You may have seen the TMZ photos that have surfaced recently of Lindsey Graham's body leaving. But I want to know more about this call from Baltimore. This female who called, what was the relationship with Lindsey Graham? Was she being told by him that he didn't feel good? Was his last call actually with Donald Trump? And, it's notable. I mean, Lindsey Graham posted about 6 days ago, at least they used a good photo of me. Judge me by my enemies, referring to the Iranian mortars at Ayatollah Khamenei's funeral, who are having images and visuals of Lindsey Graham being a target of Iran. Could he be a target of Russia? Could he be a target of other intelligence agencies, whether it's the Mossad or otherwise?
Yes,
could he be, or is this 71-year-old guy has this aortic condition, and it was building up slowly but surely. We believe he drank heavily and, and didn't seem to necessarily have the most healthy, habits out there. Donald Trump said that he spoke to Lindsey Graham minutes before Graham's death. This is what Donald Trump had to say. Play this clip right here.
And just to make that point, I mean, authorities were called to his home responding to initial reports of a cardiac arrest. Again, his office saying a brief and sudden illness. Do you have any more details?
I would think it would be that, because when I spoke to him, it could have been, minutes before, based on, based on the fact that I heard about the call, whatever time that was. So it was shortly before. But it had to be something like that, because he was, other than being tired, he was fine. And so it had to be something like that would just be a quick end. And maybe that's not the worst way to go. He had some fine moments.
One of the things that I think, also raised questions on a number of levels as well, is that after Lindsey Graham's death, Mitch McConnell, 84 years old, Lindsey Graham, 71 years old, Mitch McConnell posted a proof of life photo holding a newspaper from yesterday, I guess, to try to prove that, that this was a fresh photo, but was also raising red flags that why would you not do a video, right? I mean, okay, you did a photo, but do a video so we can hear how you sound. And, are you able to put words together or, so to me, one of the big red flags there, but also as you read this statement that, appears to be riddled with lies and, we appreciate it. We'd love to get back to the Senate, but the doctors tell me I need to stay here. It's just fascinating that there's no mention at all about Lindsey Graham, which is also suspicious. If you were to be doing this the day after Lindsey Graham died and you're friends with Lindsey Graham and you want to show your own proof of life, wouldn't you mention Lindsey Graham in the statement somewhere there? And then I'll just say this as well. Lindsey Graham's death has now been used by Donald Trump and MAGA to further pursue their fascist ends. All right, we got to do ground invasions in Iran and we've got to blow up Iran to honor Lindsey Graham. We got to pass the Voter Suppression Act to honor Lindsey Graham. We've got to rally around Trump's fascist agenda. That's what Lindsey would want. Lindsey would want us to do these things. So with all of this as well, it should be noted too that Bill Pulte is running the ODNI, the Office for the Director of National Intelligence, that the Trump regime has gutted. Most of our top intelligence people have been pushed out or silenced at this point as well. And, you put all of this together and those are the questions that I think, again, need to be asked. It is not wild fantasy, crazy talk to say, could a foreign intelligence agency or domestic, foreign or domestic or anybody, or intelligence agency, utilize weapons that produce an outcome that we know to be the outcome? What are the aims? What are the objectives? Is it,
Assad did it. They've been blackmailing him like they got the Epstein blackmail on Trump. But now we're going to go to the blackmail. The blackmail is hitting the internet. The news is trying not to talk about it, but it's everywhere, and I'm going to start playing it. His double life is out there now. What they had on him is coming to the internet for free, and they not going to be able to hide it.
I travel. Lindsey Graham died. I'm sure you've heard by now, and if I'm the first person to tell you, I'm sorry or you're welcome. And on top of that, missed this while I was traveling. I do have updates for you. The NDAs apparently are off, and now people are talking their shit. And by the way, you can't be sued for defamation when someone is dead. So it's just like a free-for-all. So that stuff's kicked up. We have the alleged reason why he died. And on top of all that, my internet's out. And so I'm doing this literally from the hotspot on my phone. And I just have to say before we get any further into this, because I've mentioned it before, when
we start hearing these stories in these videos, how this dude and the people that's coming out, it's calling these sex workers he getting dressed up like females, just sex workers. You know, the Israelis put the honeypot on this boy, filmed him doing some very disgusting stuff, and they've been blackmailing him for decades.
We now have data. I might do a full video on this, but I am truly being suppressed by YouTube. I don't know if it's malicious or not, but you can see here, this is how I used to get views, majority of which were from unsubscribed people, and brief and sudden death. He said here, after hanging up with Trump, apparently Trump was the last person, one of the last people he talked to, which is very, there it is. Would you want Trump to be the last person you talk to before you're sent back to your ultimate home? After hanging up with Trump, Graham spoke with another person who told Axios that the senator had complained of feeling unwell. The person urged Graham to get medical help right away, but the senator shrugged off the advice and said he would go on Sunday morning after his scheduled appearance on NBC's Meet the Press, saying here, I can't die now. According to Axios, I still need to do the Russia sanctions, get Iran sorted out, and do Israeli-Saudi normalization. LOL, LOL. And of course, he died shortly thereafter. I will say, let that be a lesson though, because that is like, let's like not joke about that. Like, if truly ever, if you feel like and you're able to go to the hospital or a doctor, and if you are ever feeling like that's like you're feeling a little off, better safe than sorry. Don't be like Lindsey Graham. Go to the doctor.
He was poisoned. Nothing was.
Now, Lindsey Graham, 5 days ago, posted this saying, at least they used a good photo of me, judge me by my enemies, where people in Iran were threatening to kill him. Now, I don't believe that anything malicious has happened here. We're going to go through it. But this is the dispatch, the radio dispatch, when Lindsey Graham was discovered.
In response, 517 response, chest pains, South Capitol Street, Southeast. In response, 517 response, chest pains, South Capitol Street, Southeast.
All of this is.
And let's respond to medical level. Intercept 7 respond for chest pains, South Capitol Street, Southeast. Tech 2027.
Agent 7 to communications for a call back. You have open the front door.
Copy, same. I will call back 2032.
America. That's why.
All right, so they couldn't open the front door, and they actually had to
see Trump being the president. That supposed to solidify. I'm saying I talk to him. You ain't talking to no damn body. Well, guess what? Trump is the president of the United States. That phone call, we should have a phone call of Trump talking to Lindsey Graham. Nigga, all your phone calls is recorded. He gonna regret saying that one day when somebody want to pull that record and they can't, because it's not gonna be no record of him talking to no damn Lindsey Graham.
Barged in, and they found this. This is Lindsey Graham here. There he is. He was found not doing well, as you can see here. I really don't want to mock death. I mean, I know some people are having fun on the internet. I do think it was okay to mock him, but I don't think mocking death is not what I want to do. But I don't have any, good feelings towards Lindsey Graham. Let's just put it that way. And here is CNN given more information around this, saying the following information is from the medical examiner of the District of Columbia's preliminary findings regarding Graham's death. The preliminary examination findings were aortic dissection due to arteriosclerotic cardiovascular disease. Let's just call it that. Cardiovascular disease. The death certificate will be pending until all the toxicological and microscopic testing are finalized. So basically, there was a problem with his heart, and he passed away. Now, Lindsey Graham, I will say this. The one thing I will say about this man wanted to protect Ukraine. Okay? That's what I'm worried about. Is Lindsey Graham was a staunch defender of Ukraine, and he knew Russia was the enemy. Far and few of them now in the Republican Party. And I don't know how you feel. I feel like Ukraine.
Ripping Ukraine off.
I'm team Ukraine. Okay? Ukraine did nothing wrong. They were invaded by another country. And I think Ukraine has every right to destroy those bastards and get them out of their fucking country. And Lindsey and I agreed on that one thing. And I think he was one of the few people that actually helped Trump stop being completely pro-Putin. Zelensky wrote a nice message here Donald Trump wrote an insane message saying Senator Lindsey Graham, one of the greatest people and senators I've ever known, is dead. Exclamation point. This man he just does not have normal people feelings. He actually was on CNN with Jake Tapper, and this is what he had to say.
Bit of a different attitude, but we got along on it. Essentially, we agreed. And essentially, we agreed on almost everything. Where he was really becoming strong was the save of
friends. Jill and I, shocked by the sudden passing of Lindsey Graham. Lindsey and I are served together in the Commonwealth. Most of you know him as a homosexual. About her experience when Lindsey Graham, she said the following: just woke up to find out Lindsey Graham is dead, LOL. Most of you know him as a homophobic senator from South Carolina, but to me, he will always be the man who paid a twink pre-transition college student a fat stack of cash to do unspeakable things to him in a hotel room while he wore red lingerie.
This is one of the trannies who came out on Instagram telling their story, saying Lindsey Graham paid them when they was in college and they was transitioning money to do unspeakable things to him while he wore red lingerie. There's plenty of stories like this. He was getting blackmailed. If these regular people were doing this to him, imagine what the Israelis had on him.
A canon trans event to have far-right freaks bankrolling you and then turning around and voting against you. People love to judge us for it, but I never see them opening their wallets. Shout out to sex workers everywhere forced to humanize their enemies just to make rent. She goes on to say it's an absolute mindfuck to me that one of the reasons I have any semblance of financial security is because of this man. At the time, I had no idea who he was, and I only figured it out because of another group of twinks who spoke of Lady G to the media. Some queers try to grandstand critique this, saying we shouldn't out people. I believe bigots with power deserve no peace or privacy. I'm glad they did it. Icons forever. Very interesting. This person wanted to say, Lindsey, rest in hell for what you did to our community. I will continue to love queer and trans people harder than you ever hated us. And this person is James is smiling. James is smiling. We've actually reached out to her to see if she would want to come on the channel, talk about her experience. We will let you know if that happens. But I'll say this. I'm just going to say this. Those NDAs, baby, they don't matter anymore. They don't now. I guess they can technically go back. They can be transferred to the estate, but kind of hard to sue someone when you're no longer alive. Wouldn't you agree? Now, someone had this question. So are the NDAs void now? Yeah, I think they are. So we're going to keep following this. We're going to keep following it, but
the person on the other end of that phone said, if you go forward with your story on Lindsey Graham, be sure to watch your back, and same thing to your family.
Yesterday, I brought you a story about how one person, Jesse James Rose, told her truth about an experience she had with Lindsey Graham. And one of the things I love about independent media is that we can talk about these stories in a way that corporate media cannot, in a way that the legacy media won't touch. And what happened was that several folks reached out to me with their own experience of what they said has happened between them and Lindsey Graham. I'm going to bring you that story. I have some exclusive reporting for you on that. And my guess is this won't be the last time we hear something like that. But before we get into any of this, my lawyer did want me to say the following statement, and that is that what follows are allegations. They have not been proven, and we could not independently verify these claims. No news investigation ever substantiated them, and no documentary evidence has surfaced. And for the record, Lindsey Graham has denied being gay throughout his life. He told the New York Times Magazine in 2010, quote, "I ain't gay and sorry." And in 2018, he told TMZ, "To the extent that it matters, I'm not gay." When the escort allegations first surfaced in 2020, his office dismissed them as politically motivated trolling. and he never personally addressed them. Links to everything we talk about here will be in the description, but here is what we know. Now, I'm going to say real fast, this is why I want to talk about this, because listen, you might not know, I'm gay, been gay my whole life, been out since I was 16, okay? Now, I do have immense empathy for folks who feel like they could never come out, either because of societal pressure or because they are raised in such a way that they feel as though they're living some life of sin or shame. I get that. And I do have empathy for people who feel like they just can't come out, it's not safe for them, or they've been so brainwashed by their religion or by their parents that they'll never be able to live their truest self, okay? I get that. But the thing that pisses me off is when you aren't out, you engage in your sexual desires, you use other people to fulfill your enjoyment, and then at the same time, you use the power that you've acquired by fitting the mold you think you need to be in order to obtain power, to use it to hurt the people who are bringing you pleasure. It doesn't sit right with me. And Lindsey Graham was no different, okay? This is just a little bit of Lindsey Graham's anti-LGBTQ plus record. In 1996, he voted for the Defense of Marriage Act as a member of the House. In 2010, he voted against the legislation that repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell. In 2013, he voted against the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. In 2015, when the Supreme Court established nationwide marriage equality in his 2015 ruling, Graham said he would abide by the decision while making clear that he opposed it. And in 2022, very recently, Graham voted against the Respect for Marriage Act. The bill still passed the Senate in 61-36 with support from 12 Republicans, not Lindsey Graham, though. And this is an ongoing problem, okay? This is just a few of the people on the right who are anti-LGBTQ plus, and yet they be doing some gay shit on the side, and then they get caught, okay? And so I'm just like sick of this shit. And so that's the main reason why I want to bring you stories like this, because I don't care if you live the life of a hypocrite. I start to care when you live.
But these bastards want to talk shit about Obama and Michelle, when Lindsey Graham, one of the most powerful, biggest in the world, definitely the Republican Party, was calling these trannies, these cross-dressers, dressing up like a female while they done some very despicable things to him, and then get on TV and talk shit to the world.
You live the life of a hypocrite, and then you use your power to attack the people who actually have the bravery and the audacity to live freely. So let me introduce you to Taylor Snyder. So I didn't know who Taylor was. Taylor messaged me late last night after I made the video about Jesse James and her experience with Lindsey Graham, saying that someone forwarded her my work and said that I might be willing to talk to her. And we did talk. Now, yesterday, when Lindsey Graham died, Taylor went on the record with a short video, and here's what she said.
Just woke up. Senator Lindsey Graham is dead. Some of you may know this and some of you may not, but for a very long time, I was a fierce sex worker. Kind of still am. But Senator Lindsey Graham was one of my clients. You know, this transphobic, homophobic man can rot in hell. When I first met Lindsey Graham,
But just imagine the media acting like they don't give a damn about none of this. The reason this is so important is because he was being blackmailed. If these regular trannies, cross-dressers is coming out telling you what they were doing with Lindsey Graham, what the hell you think the Israelis had on that man, bro?
I had no idea who he was. I just thought he was some horny old man. And there is a bit of lore behind me knowing him for sure. Like I was definitely threatened with my life. So if you want more story and more tea, sound off in the comments.
Well, baby, I sound off in the DMs, and I got a little bit more tea from Taylor, and she's right. As I referenced in that statement up top, in 2020, a bunch of escorts and a porn star came forward saying the following. This is Sean Harding. There is a homophobic Republican senator who is no better than Trump, who keeps passing legislation that is damaging to the LGBT and minority communities. Every sex worker I know has been hired by this man, wondering if enough of us spoke out, if that could get him out of office. So that came out, and what is, I think, quite shocking, was not anticipating, is that Taylor.
And remember when they say sex worker, they're not talking about females.
Said that her life was threatened not by Lindsey Graham, but by someone she's assuming worked for him. Now, here is what Taylor told me on the record in a voice note. And then I have for you messages from Taylor that she had with the senator at the time. But first, let's get to these messages.
Yes, there is actually something else I'd like to share. I took the liberty of taking a look at some of your other videos, and just pertaining to this Lindsey Graham situation, there were no NDAs involved. Lindsey Graham was a fucking idiot, and back in the day when
what these people describing, and they finna be documenting the evidence, they got the receipts. He was violating the Mann Act. He was prostitution. Lindsey Graham was committing all kind of felonies, but that's why they are bought and paid for, and that's why they are being extorted, and that's why he never gave a damn. He just did what he wanted because they already had to sell out.
he was really, really frivolous about who he was seeing and how he was seeing people. I mean, back in 2015 when I saw him, nobody had a fucking clue who Lindsey Graham was unless you were heavily into politics. And not only that, nobody knew who he was. And then like when he started the Tea Party, that's when everyone started to pay attention to him more, at least the people that weren't in politics. So, but going back to my initial statement, there were no NDAs, nothing was signed. So, but the reality of the situation was that this is just my perception as well, and this is my lived experience. Lindsey Graham had people working for him. I don't know what their positions were. I don't know if they were just an assistant. I don't know if they were other people in power that worked for the government or anything like that. But I was like literally like threatened verbally over the phone. My family was threatened as well. So right about a week before, I was planning on moving forward with my news story regarding him. About a week and a half before, it was already like borderline getting pitched to like media outlets lightly, and about a week and a half before all of the shit was about to hit the fan, I got a phone call from a blocked number as I'm waiting at a gate to go catch a flight, and it was from a blocked number. And then I answered the phone, and in more words or less, the person on the other end of that phone said, "If you go forward with your story on Lindsey Graham, be sure to watch your back, and same thing to your family." And yeah, that was very earth-shaking. And so the only thing I'm going to ask and interject into this is that just to please don't lose the essence of the humanity for the people that are on the receiving end of Lindsey Graham's bullshit. Just try your best to have a little bit of empathy to us. That's all.
There's a little bit more I want to go through, but first, let us remember that yes, these are real people who say they experienced unthinkable threats from people with extreme amounts of power. Now, I have personally wondered why more people haven't come forward, and I think we're starting to understand why that is, because many of them were organized, ready to say something, and then it looks as though someone allegedly tried to stop them through vague threats of violence. And so to me, Taylor comes across quite credible. I spoke to her on the phone last night just to say thank you for sharing her story and for being brave enough to share it now. And Taylor's not getting any money for this. Taylor is not going to be, this isn't going to help Taylor. This is really someone I think who is trying to get the weight off of her shoulders. And so let's just go on to the second part here, because I think she really wanted to say why it is that she backed down.
And just for context, the reason why I didn't move forward with this story was because I was verbally threatened. So I was verbally threatened. My family's livelihoods were threatened. And I took it seriously. Now, it could have just been an empty threat, but it shook me enough to my core to pull the plug on everything. And it wasn't that just wasn't the case for me. It was the situation for everyone else that was involved in the story that we were trying to release as well. So everyone backed out. It wasn't just me. But But yeah, so that's basically why everything just kind of has kind of been the way it has been for the last 11 years, at least for me.
All right, now let's get into these text messages here where this was Taylor's profile on the site. And these are the text messages she alleges came from Lindsey Graham's Google Voice number. So it says the following here. Hello, Allison. Are you available today? Interested in an appointment for this afternoon if possible. Now, escorts or sex workers quite often will use an alias when doing this type of work. So that's why we're seeing the name Allison here. Yes, of course. I'll be in DuPont Circle closer to noon. I'm flying in from Atlanta and land in around 10 a.m. Do you have a specific time in mind? Allegedly, Lindsey says, when is the soonest you'll be available? Would 1:30 or 2 work with you, just so I can check in and freshen up? That works. Donation, I request $400 minimum for my time. Does that work with you? It does. Are you more of a top or a bottom? I am a bottom. Taylor says, I'm 100% versatile, but please refrain from speaking explicit over the phone until we get acquainted, please. Okay, sorry, 2 p.m. should work fine. Do you think you'd be able to send me a photo of yourself? I can send one back. No, I'm very discreet. No pictures, but I am legit. I can give you a reference.
Now, imagine all of these messages is being intercepted by the Mossad, by the Russians, by the Chinese. All foreign intelligence have these messages of this dude right now engaging in the man act, engaging in prostitution with cross-dressers and transsexuals. That's a fact. He was being blackmailed.
If you'd like a reference meaning from someone else who has been with Lindsey. It's not necessary. I don't like dealing with advertisers. Thank you, though. She gives the address. This is where I'm staying. Lindsey says very close to where I'm at. Perfect. So should I expect you at 2? Could you at least describe what you look like? Old white male, salt and pepper hair, stocky build. Sounds like someone we know. Taylor says, no problem with me. Okay, give me a call around 1:45-ish. If you can just let me know when you're here. When you arrive, call me and I'll tell you my details. Sounds good to me. See you soon. Beautiful. As some backup evidence here, here's the timeline of Senator Lindsey Graham. So Lindsey Graham announced on June 1st, 2015, presidential run. On June 5th to the 6th, he was in Iowa for events. On June 6th, Joe Biden's son actually died, and Senator Graham tweeted condolences. On June 7th, Senator Graham announced that he embraces Caitlyn Jenner and transgenders. And then on June 7th, he met with Taylor at the Hilton in DuPont Circle. And as you can see here, Senator Lindsey Graham was in D.C. on June 9th, 2015, as this picture clearly shows. So certainly the timeline here lines up as well. So that's what we know so far. And I just want to again say thank you to Taylor for coming forward, sharing her experience. It is I just cannot impress upon you enough how scary it is to get a call from an unknown number, someone that vaguely threatens you from what you assume is one of the most powerful people in the country, connected to the president. It's a very scary experience. I can only imagine what that's like. And I do not judge her for not feeling like she could come forward then. I'm grateful she's coming forward now. If you or someone you know has had an experience with Lindsey Graham, we certainly are willing to speak to you. We might not be able to publish everything, but we definitely would like to get as much evidence as we can, because we want to show that, like, one, we're not going to like allow this shit to continue. If you want to be gay and act gay, fine, but you're not allowed to then use your power to try to hurt us. That's just not happening anymore. And if you are, then we're going to out you, whether you're dead or alive. So thank you for watching. Again, these are all allegations, unverified, but we do believe Taylor to be quite credible. And if you'd like to see more of this content, hit like, subscribe. Again, plug in Taylor. You can follow her on Instagram here, Taylor Snyder X. Send her a comment. Say thank you for coming forward. I'm sure she'd appreciate that. And I'll see you soon. Bye.
Hey everybody, Dr. G here. I'm a clinical and forensic psychologist, as well as a body language and counterterrorism expert. And today we're going to be analyzing whether or not it's feasible that Lindsey Graham could have been assassinated. Before we get started with this, a couple of quick things. One, I wanted to make sure you know this is not a psychological evaluation of any kind. These are just my opinions. In addition to that, I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, let's go. On July 11th, longtime South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham passed away at the age of 71. The cause of death is reportedly aortic dissection with underlying heart disease. What we're going to be analyzing today is if it's feasible that there could be more to it. Could there be something that caused the aortic dissection beyond just natural causes? Shortly after this was announced, I saw people already talking about whether or not maybe a foreign government was involved. Was this something that happened naturally, or was this in fact an assassination that was meant to look like something that happened naturally? First, we're going to watch some recent footage of Lindsey Graham, and then we're going to look at what the evidence supports. All right, let's just jump right in.
As of about 30 minutes ago, we've reached agreement with the White House on a version of the Russian sanctions bill that they...
Now, this is his final public appearance. As you can see right now, his energy level, everything about him seems about like normal.
They will support. It means it's going to become law. So when I get back to Washington, I'm going to go with Senator Blumenthal to the Republican and Democratic leader to see if we can find time to move this Russian sanctions package that would give tools to President Trump.
Now, obviously, right now he's talking about sanctions against Russia. This is nothing unusual. This is something he's talked about plenty of times and endorsed plenty of times before. But he is someone that is very hawkish on both Iran and Russia.
Have the formula to end this war. Help Ukraine be more lethal. Let those supporting Russia to know it's going to be a price to be paid if you keep doing it. And to try to find an off-ramp, not to humiliate Putin, but to end this war so that Ukraine will thrive and survive.
So to state the obvious, Lindsey Graham did have political enemies. He was very big on military intervention with Russia. He also was recently threatened by Iran. Now, if you look at this picture from Khomeini's funeral, this was posted by Lindsey Graham on July 6th. He obviously is jokingly saying, at least they used a good photo of me, judge me by my enemies. But as you can see, Iran, for example, was actively threatening Lindsey Graham. So is there a motive for foreign governments to go after Lindsey Graham? Well, it seems like it. It seems like they made pretty overt threats to him, at least Iran did. Now, as you can see in this video, Lindsey Graham is pretty much behaving like he normally does. If you've ever watched him speak, there's nothing unusual about this. This is basically how he typically comes across. That being said, prior to major cardiac events, there aren't always big signs. So the fact that he wasn't acting unusual and didn't seem unusual is not necessarily indicative that he wasn't going to have an event of this kind. That being said, let's talk a little bit about his family history, and then we're going to talk about the history of the way that foreign governments have typically assassinated people, how it is that they have done things that resemble something like this. Now, what's being reported is that his father, around 68 or 69 years old, passed away from a heart attack. Now, what's different about that than what he passed away from what Lindsey Graham passed away from, is that Lindsey Graham had an aortic dissection. Having a family history of heart attacks can be different than aortic dissections. So just because his father passed of a heart attack, him dying of an aortic dissection is not necessarily as predictable as you might think. Those are not always as connected as you might think. Something else I've seen people point out is that he likely would have had some world-class medical care, so people would have assumed that he would have caught something like this. That's not always the case, but I at least want to point out that the link between him and his father may not be exactly as it seems. Now, could an aortic dissection be induced? Could somebody cause something like that? Well, that's where we're going to go in and look at the history of people who have been assassinated by foreign governments, or who at least have been attempted to be assassinated by foreign governments. Now, intelligence agencies have assassinated people, and one method that they use can be poisons or toxins. Alexander Litvinenko, for example, he was poisoned with radiation. Alexei Navalny, who actually survived his poisoning, reportedly they put a neurotoxin on his underwear. Now, no government claimed that poisoning of Alexei Navalny, but it doesn't change the fact that this can be how intelligence agencies operate. Now, something like an aortic dissection, how Lindsey Graham passed away, could that be induced by a poison, for example? Well, an aortic dissection can be caused by a massive spike in blood pressure, which can be caused by substances. They can also be caused by poisons. So when you ask questions like this, if they seem conspiracy-oriented, this is much more grounded in reality than some of the other conspiracies that we've seen floating around recently. Charlie Kirk, for example. Governments want to have plausible deniability. They do not want to execute somebody in front of hundreds or thousands of people unless it is an act of terror. Acts of terror are meant to be public. They are meant to cause confusion. They are meant to cause this sort of collateral damage. Whereas real political assassinations typically look more like this. Typically, someone will die from something that could plausibly be covered up by something else, a natural cause, an accident, so on and so forth. So when you look at a situation like this, he does have a medical history, at least according to what's being reported, that could be consistent with someone who has heart disease. But that's exactly the kind of thing a foreign government would want to use to make it look natural. Like I said, you can induce these kinds of issues with substances, poisons. There's a number of ways to cause something like this to happen. And so it's not entirely outside of the realm of possibility that something like this was induced, that was meant to bring minimal attention to the way it was done, but could also have maximum effect. Well, foreign governments certainly have the capability. They also have the motive. But there is no evidence at this point that anybody else was involved. So do I think Lindsey Graham was assassinated? It seems unlikely. I have no specific reason to believe that at this point, but I wouldn't refute it if evidence comes out later that suggests that there was foul play, that there was somebody else involved in causing him to have a spike in blood pressure, which caused an aortic dissection or something to that effect. If you have any other thoughts about this, or if there's anything else you want me to analyze, please let me know in the comments below. Last thing before we get finished up is I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, thanks for watching.
Israel took out Lindsey Graham because he was just about to switch up on them. I'm kidding, but wouldn't that be crazy? Folks, welcome back to The Narrative with me, your host, Will Sexton, the host with the most and the most alibis for why I wasn't at the bathhouse. Folks, I imagine you've been hearing it from literally everybody, but yes, Lindsey Graham is no longer with us. Israel's top guy, and I mean that in more ways than one, has left this earth and has left behind his post as U.S. Senator at the ripe old age of 71. Lord forgive me, it's Sunday, I'm filming this. I'm not usually the type to make fun of the dead. I feel like it's classless, but I think Lindsey Graham, we can make an exception. I don't know how many of you are just fully aware of Lindsey Graham. He is kind of a more niche political figure, but Lindsey Graham, this is a guy who the phrase top goy is a criminal understatement. If there is anybody in the United States government who ever represented the neocon movement more, it would be Lindsey Graham. The only thing he's missing is the fact that he's not, you know, his last name's Graham, not Grahamberg. That's all I'm going to say. But you're already seeing from all these different figures, these absolutely classless tweets about how Lindsey Graham is a better Republican than Thomas Massie, which just, that's, oh, I mean, just disgusting behavior. And of course, every single Republican establishment figure is coming out of the woodwork to talk about how great Lindsey Graham was and how he will be so sorely missed. And again, I'm not one to make ill of the dead, but let it be known, this is a guy who Itamar Ben-Gvir was eulogizing on Twitter. I am not God, and I am certainly not one of his saints, but I feel like I can fairly say this is not a man who's going to be seeing the gates of heaven. And inversely, we're seeing figures like Ana Kasparian and Nick Fuentes expressing happiness over his passing. And all of this leads to a bigger question, because again, Lindsey Graham, bureaucratic career politician, very deeply embedded into our government and the institutions of power. And so maybe you at home, maybe you're not from America, maybe you don't know American politics intimately enough to know who he was or what he did. I thought I'd make a video breaking down who exactly was Lindsey Graham. It's one thing to hear that he was a neocon or he liked Israel, but it's another thing to know exactly what he did and why he did it. And so I thought for a fun little Monday episode, we would take a little deep dive into Washington's most shallow career politician, described by many as a war hawk, an Iran hawk. I mean, this is a guy who's leaving behind him a vast legacy and not really a good one. And so in order to understand who Lindsey Graham is, this whole journey takes us back to a fine year before the internet and just after the release of Nirvana's In Utero, the year of our Lord, 1994. In 1994, the 20-year incumbent Democrat U.S. Congressman Butler Derrick of South Carolina's 3rd Congressional District decided to retire. Graham, a quickly rising party favorite coming out of the South Carolina House of Representatives, decides to take a swing at the U.S. House of Representatives. He's elected and thus begins his very, very long political career. Now, here's what you have to understand about the time in which Lindsey Graham got involved in politics. 90s is peak neocon era. I've talked before about the neocons and like what they are, where they started, what their very clear affinity is, and what their actual aims were. They started in the Cold War around the time that the Soviet Union switched up on Israel. And so while the neoconservatives, who were formerly socialists, decided to become conservatives because they wanted to take down the Soviet Union, which they feel had been usurped by them forces. And so Lindsey Graham, he shows himself very quickly to be the perfect like Gentile token in this sphere. And the neocons reigned for a very long time, peaking with Ronald Reagan. One could say that Ronald Reagan was the definitive neocon president. Now, this is the mid to late 1990s, so Reagan is well behind us at this point, but neocons are still looked upon favorably. This was a time in which you could run and say that you were a neocon and it wouldn't be derogatory, like it was seen as a good thing. Lindsey Graham, he gets elected during this time. Lindsey Graham very quickly proves himself to be a proper Shabbaskoy, a proper Gentile token for the political establishment. In November of 1997, he was one of the first people out of the 18 House Republicans who all co-sponsored a resolution written by Bob Barr to launch an impeachment inquiry against Bill Clinton, obviously over the whole Clinton-Lewinsky affair, which you might be hearing and say to yourself, wow, okay, well, it seems like he stands on principles. I mean, infidelity, we don't want to see that. I mean, that's not very Christian. That's not very American. Let it be known, though, and I do intend to make a whole video on the Monica Lewinsky situation. All of that conveniently happened right around the time in which Bill Clinton was trying to broker peace and establish a Palestinian state, which was the defining reason behind why Lindsey Graham did this. He didn't actually care about the infidelity. If infidelity kept you from being in government, we would have no male politicians left. In 2002, he joins the U.S. Senate, and this is where he'll remain for a very, very long time. Hold on. If you're liking the video so far, I hate to do it to you, but be sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and comment down below what you would like to see next. I got a hard CTA, you guys. I'm sorry. I know it's annoying, but it's how you get engagement up on the videos. And trust me, they're doing everything they can to ensure that you don't see videos like this. Whatever it is you're doing, take a quick break, leave a comment down below, like the video, and let's continue on with this deep dive. Now, the late 90s, early 2000s, this is where a profound political shift occurs in the Republican Party. In the first Obama term, they largely got along. It was only after a very important moment in Obama's political career that our friend Lindsey Graham decided to switch up on him. In 2015, obviously the JCPOA, that's the Iran nuclear deal, Obama goes to sign and Lindsey Graham is furious. Because let's be clear, bombing Iran was Lindsey Graham's wet dream. This guy had been advocating for us to go to war with Iran all the way back in the 90s. This is when him, along with a lot of people in the establishment, suddenly go from being these bipartisan, moderate Republicans to fiercely anti-Obama. This is also around the same time as another very, very important moment in Republican politics. See, because 2010 was the rise of the Tea Party movement. Now, the Tea Party movement, again, that deserves its own video. Tea Party movement, very, very fascinating. There's been this weird series of populist movements that have spawned up, especially on the American right, all throughout really the 20th century history. But one could argue that Groyperism, that the movement of Nick Fuentes is like the modern form of that. It's the modern iteration of that kind of movement. But at the time, the Tea Party patriots, they were the Groypers. Granted, they were much more libertarian, hence their name, the Tea Party Patriots, but anti-mass migration, anti-foreign intervention. I mean, everything you think of when you think of kind of the America First position. Graham hated the Tea Party Patriots because the Tea Party, one of their big things was they didn't like how much money we were giving to Israel. They didn't like foreign intervention. Mind you, the Tea Party, they spawned after 2008, the Great Recession. And so a lot of America is very poor, hardly any jobs. I mean, honestly, it's actually fairly similar to today. That's It's a bit of a black pill. But one of the things that the Tea Party movement was explicitly against was neoconservatism, which they saw as what brought us to Iraq and created a lot of the problems that were happening in the government at the time. I mean, this is really the birth of like real populism at this time. And they saw Lindsey Graham as the poster boy of neoconservatism. This is a guy who was socially very liberal, pro-mass migration, pro-tax cuts for the wealthy. I mean, everything you think of when you think of like Reagan-style neoconservatism. Mind you, this is a guy who in 2011 said, quote, "Free speech is a great idea, but we're in a war. During World War II, we had limits on what you could say if it would inspire the enemy." Real patriot. All of this culminates in 2015, when in the face of the Tea Party, in the face of this changing politics, that he decides he is going to run for president. Very, very short presidential bid. He announced it on June 1st and ended it on December 21st, 2015, opting instead to endorse Jeb Bush, the neocon hopeful who was going to take over the government until a very, very important figure stepped up and took the reins, that being one Donald Trump. Now, I know that we look at Donald Trump today and we see just another neocon. We see just another puppet of the Israeli regime, which that's exactly what he is. But you have to understand, at the time, Donald Trump was a radical departure from Republican politics. This is why he got elected. This is why boomers don't think he is an Israel puppet. It's probably because the last time they were sentient was in 2015, but that's besides the point. Trump's original run was very explicitly against neoconservatism. MAGA was seen as the final evolution of the Tea Party. Populist, pro-public, pro-immigration reform, anti-war, fiscally conservative. I mean, all these things that we think of when we think of the original Donald Trump campaign. This was Donald Trump's entire brand at the time. And this shook the Republican establishment. The Republican establishment was not ready for this. We obviously know what happened. Donald Trump won, and then Lindsey Graham decided to fall in line, having spent the rest of his political career slowly falling in line behind Donald Trump, and then especially falling in line behind Donald Trump in this current administration up until his death. Isn't that funny? He started disliking Obama when Obama went against Israel, and he started liking Trump when Trump became pro-Israel. Isn't that weird? And if you're thinking to yourself, that is a little weird, there's a reason for all of that. But in order to understand the reason behind all that, we have to take a trip back to the very start of this whole thing and get into, where was the guy getting his money? At the time of his death, Lindsey Graham was worth $3 million, which, granted, that's not a crazy amount of money for some of these senators and congressmen, other career politicians out here, but that's significantly more than they pay the annual salary of a senator or a congressman. Campaigns aren't cheap either. They require funding. And it begs a great question. How did he get the money? Where did this money come from? Does that have anything to do with his political positions? The answer is yes. It has literally everything to do with his political positions. It is estimated that Lindsey Graham, throughout his career, received over $1 million from pro-Israel PACs. $1 million to a senator who wasn't really contested in the region he's from. Like the guy, you ever seen a Lindsey Graham campaign ad? Like, he didn't need them. It was just kind of de facto, he was going to be the senator. And yet he received over $1 million from pro-Israel groups, over $1 million that we know of. And those are from explicitly pro-Israel groups. That's not even including the money he got from Boeing, law firms, etc., etc. And actually, funny enough, in 2015, when he announced that he was going to run for president, he received over $1 million alone from the Adelsons. It was only after Donald Trump's rise that then the Adelsons switched the money spout from him to Donald Trump, something I've spoken about before in this kind of grander Adelson game, which established the current Trump administration. All of that paints a bigger picture that I think a lot of people aren't getting. We know it definitively that the Adelsons around the same time funded both Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump's careers, funded their political campaigns and then their administrations respectively. This is because the Adelsons were some of the first to break away from the neoconservative line and go instead towards the Likudnik revisionist Zionist line, something that Donald Trump now embodies in his administration. It is absolutely in the realm of possibility that Lindsey Graham was probably made aware of this as the Adelsons came in and started funding Donald Trump and basically creating MAGA. This is why, despite during Trump's initial rise, he had all sorts of flaming rhetoric at him. Flaming, no pun intended. We'll get there. From 2015 to 2016, he was a harsh critic, calling Donald Trump a demagogue, a bigot, a religious xenophobe. But all of a sudden, this money gets put on Donald Trump from the Adelsons, and he changes his tune. 2016 onward, he becomes incredibly close to the Donald Trump administration, becomes a golf partner of Donald Trump. And Graham is personally put up to be a foreign policy advisor on the Middle East. It was Graham's backing that pushed for the Jerusalem embassy move, recognition of the Golan Heights, and the Abraham Accords. This is the same guy who later on would say that the public should move forward past the Epstein files. Wow. I mean, just that's something. We should move past the Epstein files. All of this points to a bigger picture about the Republican establishment and the reign of neoconservatism. It is very clear that neoconservatism has just been rebranded into MAGA-ism, into Trumpism. It's the same thing. It's the same policies. It's literally the same people. It's just has different branding. Because again, Graham was an Iran war hawk. The guy tried to get us to bomb Iran hundreds of times. I'm not kidding. He would bring up resolutions about this all the time. The guy wanted literally nothing more than to bomb Iran. And all of that is in line with every other Republican crony, like Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham really is representative of everything that's wrong with establishment politics, both left and right, but in this case, the very specific right-wing flavor of establishment politics. Now, I've made a video on the history of neoconservatism. I have, and I've talked lightly about how the Adelsons actually work. But let me give you a basic breakdown as to how it pertains to Lindsey Graham and the legacy that he leaves behind him. Neoconservatism can basically be summed up as give all of our stuff to Israel. Like, it's just the greater Israel project in America. It got its start at a time where all of these intellectuals and like socialist metropolitan figures who all share a very specific kind of background suddenly turn on the Soviet Union, because the Soviet Union decided to turn on the state of Israel, instead favoring Egypt and deciding to back Nasser's Egypt. This is when all of these politicians who had socialist social values decide they need to switch sides and go to the right, because the right is the only side that's going to be pro-war enough to get back at the Soviet Union and to defend Israel's interests in the Middle East. Those are the people who basically raised Lindsey Graham. Like, that's the political establishment that brought up Lindsey Graham. It was literally Crystal himself, the grandfather of neoconservatism, who said that the Soviet Union switch was like him being mugged by reality. The same exact language that was used by one Bill Ackman, someone we've talked about before, on October 7th. And this ties into all of it. The Adelsons had a very clear plan all the way back when Donald Trump first became a viable popular option to usurp real populism, real public American discontent with the status quo, and not only steer it back on the pro-Israel course, but steer it on the pro-revisionist Zionist course. That's what needs to be noted here. It's one thing to have it be steered towards just pro-Israelism. The Adelsons mark themselves as different, and their political plan marks itself as different because it's explicitly revisionist Zionist, right-wing Zionist. It is absolutely opposed to peace. It is profoundly religious rather than ideological, and it's not concerned with the things that neoconservatism claim to be concerned about: democracy, world policing, NATO, all these things. This is what needs to be noted about modern politics, that the Adelsons have been very quietly buying literally every politician that you know, buying all the influencers. I mean, literally, our friend John Doyle, my arch nemesis, works for the Adelsons. Like, they play this profoundly important role, and it's very clear they tipped Lindsey Graham off. I mean, the guy would visit Israel at least once a year throughout his entire political career. Like, he knew the Adelsons well. It's very clear that there's a grander political scheme here, that scheme being to subvert real populist American views, to take any movement that exists in America that is real and populist, that is really concerned with the benefit, the structure, the safety, the security, and the prosperity of America, and instead reorient it for Israel's gain. All of that takes us into today, into remembering the man's legacy and what it means for us, what it means for politics today, American life as we move forward. All right, we're pretty far into the video. It's time to do it. The obligatory yes, Lindsey Graham was probably gay. Now I can make a video like where we just shit on him for that, but like I don't really see a point. I don't really care if someone is gay or not. I don't really even necessarily believe in that. Like gay is an immutable characteristic and identity. I don't really subscribe to that. That's not very biblical, and I don't really subscribe to that worldview. But one does in his own personal time. Not my concern. But I imagine there are claims that maybe they had blackmail on Lindsey Graham, that the reason why Lindsey Graham was so pro-Israel is because there was blackmail on him. And like, that's not out of the realm of possibility for the state of Israel. They certainly did so during the 1940s, but he got into government in 1994. By 2012, gay marriage is legal. Like nobody cared at that point. And now American politics, I'm pretty sure you can't win as a white guy if you're not gay. So, you know, that argument kind of goes out the window. There's not really much to blackmail him on. He also hasn't shown up in any of the Epstein files that we do have. So I want to make it clear, this is a guy who just chose to do all that. That's the craziest part. You might hear me say all this and think I'm running cover for him. I'm not. I looked into it. This guy just chose to be like that. He accepted the millions of dollars, and that was all he needed. That's why this guy's on his way to hell. I mean, it's one thing if they have blackmail on you. It doesn't excuse it. You shouldn't be doing things that are blackmailable, but at least then there's an explanation behind it, okay? There's no explanation behind this. Like, this guy was just fucking evil. Like this guy was literally just ideologically a neoconservative who loved the state of Israel and like loved money, which I will say, I think that represents far more of our government than we'd like to admit, because it's one thing to think that everything is a fantastical myth and a mystery and everyone's being blackmailed and but it's another thing to recognize the sheer reality, which is that yeah, people are messed up. People are greedy. People are envious. We are a fallen species. And the centers of power in this country, which bring with them the ability to have lots of money and lots of power and lots of influence, like it's going to attract that kind of person. It's actually literally why the Republic fell in Rome, the Republic that we're based off of. Corruption, bureaucracy, I mean, these things naturally form. And Lindsey Graham is a perfect example of corrupt bureaucracy. Didn't actually stand for anything, didn't believe in anything. He just believed in money and believed in getting that money from Israel. And I guarantee you, if for some reason, some rich Palestinian, I don't know, DJ Khaled, Futta from Love Island, I don't know, Hadid father, if somebody with some Palestinian money showed up and paid him more than Israel was paying, he would have put on a keffiyeh, broke his legs from doing the dub cut, fucking age 70. Like, this is a guy who was not loyal to any flag. He was just loyal to money. And that's real evil. That's real proper evil. Let's make something clear about politics in America, what I stand for and what really you stand for, but you don't know it yet. The American people, as divided as we are one people. And it's an uncomfortable people. We don't fit with one another very well. There's this great question right now about what is an American, dual loyalty, differences of faith, differences of opinion. I get it, okay? There is a common line that runs between the lives of everyone who espouses truth, love for America, and patriotism amongst their countrymen. This is why Lindsey Graham, the establishment, feared things like Occupy Wall Street or the Tea Party or any of these populist movements, is because they fear you and me. This is the same establishment that wants nothing more than to turn our country into an economic zone without meaning. And it's unfortunate that the left has seemingly just fallen for this and like want to see it happen because they refuse to espouse any form of patriotism in the United States, which has ironically led them down the same path as the internationalists, the billionaires, the Zionists, the class of people that are causing the problems that they're reacting to. But I see too on the right this growing sentiment of white nationalism, of exclusionary nationalism. And while yes, nationalism and the way in which we fix America will be exclusionary in some ways, as I've learned more and more about the United States of America, our history, and most importantly, our recent history, I've learned that really what divides us is the sentiment of loyalty and the sentiment of patriotism. Because Lindsey Graham, by all accounts, should have been my natural brother. He was a white Gentile, born to a Scots-Irish family, literally the same lineage as me, raised in South Carolina to a Protestant family. I mean, this is a man who, according to every form of old worldism, every form of tribal identity, would have aligned with me completely. Our interests were shared, and yet he was a traitor to the country, a traitor to my people, to our people. And then I see individuals who aren't white, who aren't Christian, and yet they advocate for my interests as an American man. And see, this is why I believe in the politics of the people, is because it truly threatens the establishment. There is no left-wing establishment and right-wing establishment. They all want the same thing. They just present it in different ways. There are only super issues in this country. There are only super issues and the idiots who fall for narratives around it. But the issues are the same across the board. People can't afford homes. Our entire geopolitical clout, safety, strategy, and standing is being given to a foreign country. International elites are stomping upon our country, turning it further and further into nothing more than an economic zone ripe for exploitation. And cheap mass migration labor is deflating our wages. It's rising housing costs by 30%, decreasing our wages by an even larger margin. These are super issues. These are not white issues or black issues. These are not brown issues or Christian issues or Muslim issues. These are American issues that are facing all of us. And all that differentiates us is, who are you going to fall for? What rhetoric are you going to hear? What rhetoric are you going to listen to and eat up like an idiot? And I say that with love. Okay, I'm no smarter than anybody here. There's a reason why my forefathers marked in their documents, "We the people," because the power of America, as is the power with any nation, but especially with America as an unprecedented nation unlike any other, is the power of the people. And when I say the people, I mean who is here, not who we want here, not who was here. I mean who's here. And it kills me to watch as the dissidents hate one another, when in reality, we share the same interests, the common prosperity of all of us. Why must we hold on to the hatreds of old, to the tribalism of old, to greed, to all of these ungodly, unrighteous things? Because it's ungodly men like Lindsey Graham who turned this country into the mess that it is today. It is ungodliness that has brought us to where we are today. And don't get me wrong, I'm no Christian nationalist. I'm no saint. I'm the first among sinners, and I have no ground to stand on to tell you how to follow God. But if not one man has a monopoly on piety, then any man can tell you what it means to be godly and righteous. And I think we all know that there is nothing righteous about this kind of greed, this gluttony, and this wrath against innocent people, innocent lives miles upon miles away, based around tribalism of the old world, this old blood cult, this tribal belief derived from the Zohar and the Talmud, these old world books that have no eternal truth in them, with no empathy, no connectivity to humankind. Seeing Lindsey Graham die, seeing the right-wing discourse, the left-wing discourse, especially at this time, I'm reminded again of a question that I always ask myself and wish to ask to you at home. Where are the Americans? I don't mean in form, I don't mean in function, I don't mean in faith, I mean where are the Americans, those whose souls possess nothing but a yearning for freedom, for liberty, and a sole allegiance to the United States. We are an unprecedented country, a nation built from nations. If there was anybody who could shed off these old world isms, this disease of tribalism, ethnic nepotism, conspiracy, wrath, and holy war, it's us. Because I see types like Captive Dreamer and John Doyle, these men who would tell me that those who do not look like me are my enemy. I see them and I know that they're paid for by my enemy. And yet I see amongst you, the people who watch this, amongst the people of my everyday life, those who look nothing like me, who espouse a different view of God than me, and yet possess patriotism equal to mine, if not more. It's one thing to say that the elites fear the people. They do, and I think we all know that. But what the internationalist elite fears more than anything is the rooted man. They fear the patriotic. I said it again, these neocons, they started off as socialists, as communists, as Trotskyites. I mean, these are not people who are adverse to the idea of like the one-party state, no matter what someone like a Hassan Piker tells you. No, these are people who fear the rooted man, who knows that America is his birthright. And that's not a birthright created from blood. It's a birthright created by the soul of man. So I ask truthfully, where are the Americans who look to this and know that it's unrighteous, that it's ungodly, who look to this continent, this side of the planet, and sees our future, our destiny as a common people who must share a destiny collectively on this side of the earth? Where are the Americans who understand what it means to be an American, bigger than blood, bigger than belief, bigger than any other loyalty that exists. A soul loyalty to this soil and to everything that we have. Because to the Adelsons, to Chabad, to the Kabbalists, to the Israelis, I'm a European. To the white nationalist, I'm a European. To the leftist, to the race communist, I am a European. But I say to you definitively that I am an American. Whatever roots that existed in my blood to the European continent, to the European history, are gone. They've withered away decades ago. This is my home. This is what we are. This is who I am. And this is my sole loyalty. And if you at home, regardless of where your origin may be, if you can profess the same, then I know where the Americans are. And in this time, I ask simply of the Lord to have mercy upon Lindsey Graham's soul. I know it's one thing to make jokes, and Lord forgive us, but a death like this should remind us of the wages of sin. And it should remind us that Christ died for all of our sins. He saw the sins of someone like Lindsey Graham and knew exactly the kind of man that he would be. And yet, someone like Lindsey Graham, someone like any of these traitors, did not repent. They did not turn away from sin, turn away from wrath, turn away from these horrific things that they did. And that's no judgment. Among sinners, I am the first. You'll never, ever hear me browbeat anybody on what it means to be a godly man. But this is a moment that should remind us of the fear that we must have in God, and to be so grateful for the love that he has for us, to be so grateful that we have everything that we've never deserved. And the thing that we do deserve is what Lindsey Graham is probably going to get: suffering, the pits of hell reserved for the arrogant, the gluttonous, and the greedy. And to me, an American is someone who would never dream of enjoining himself to unrighteousness, to greed, to gluttony, to wrath against the innocent, to war for no reason, to the gains of those who follow Satan. And so I ask you all, meaningfully, with nothing but love for our union and my fellow countrymen, where are the Americans? Because wherever they are, they're not going with Lindsey Graham. Folks, that's going to do it for us today on this episode of The Narrative. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, be sure.
Coffee. Follow me.